Hello, I'm Lisa DeHart, and welcome to the coaching studio. Today, it is my honor to introduce Tünde Erdös. She is a MCC coach with the International Coaching Federation, and she's also my guest today. And Tünde has done a huge body of research, which we're going to get into in a bit. But before we even start there, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here today.
Lisa, thank you so much. And I know that my name is a pain in the neck.
Well, my name doesn't always roll off the tongue either, so it just makes you memorable. That's what it does.
I really just wanted to honor that because I know that it's a Hungarian name, so it's not easy to pronounce it.
Well, thank you for helping me also to do a better job with that. So it's always good to ask how people want, how they are called so that you know. So I start off the show really exploring sort of the coaching journey that MCCs have taken. And I'm really interested, what was your sort of meandering path to this place and time that you find yourself?
The place and the time, meandering. So you're bringing up this metaphor of meandering. It was really a meandering thing because I would never have thought that I would do the thing that I'm doing today. And unlike probably other people's path, mine was from law, studying law, then studying simultaneous interpreting and translation, to communication trainings, and then eventually moving to coaching, what we call coaching today. Mm-hmm. And law. And so what do these fields have in common for me? And what is the meandering in this is that what I noticed about myself was that when I was way younger, I was extrinsically motivated. So it was not my idea to do law. It was my father's idea. Mm-hmm. Because I was a bright child and he wanted that bright child to earn real bread. And
yeah, support herself.
I remember back then I loved painting and drawing. And I'm just, my eyes are moving to the painting behind you because I really just notice how it's grabbing my attention because it connects very deeply with me. And of course, my parents said, well, you're not going to do that because we don't want to see you end up in the streets. So that was clear right from the start. And I was a good girl. And I knew it was really interesting because even today, and it was true also back then when I was a young adult, that I loved everything sort of. So there was nothing that I thought I couldn't do. And while I loved painting and I was earning my pocket money with that, so I was really selling that stuff to my colleagues at school and co-students, and because I wouldn't get any pocket money back then, because my parents said, well, you learn to, support yourself, as you say. And I loved really doing it. And I thought that's the art and being artful. This is going to be my path. And then my dad said, look, you studied Latin and law. So this is just, it's the other side of the coin. It's the same coin, but just the flip side of the same coin. I said, okay, Dad, why not? But very soon I noticed that, and I was way into my second part of my legal studies, when you have an internship and you start specializing. Mm-hmm. And I was working for a criminal, that was a lawyer that was defending criminals. And because I was speaking various languages, including French, he took me to the provincial prison one day. And my job was to interpret for him because he didn't speak any French. So, and we were in this tiny cell. And I didn't even have any space to sit down because they were just facing each other, sitting down. And what struck me back then was this violence and aggression that I perceived that the lawyer was displaying. And I said, is this what I'm going to do one day too?
Interesting.
And that guy was just dealing with black papers, okay, black documents. I mean, he didn't kill anyone. And even if he had, it's still like, how are we choosing to deal with people? And that was something in me already that said, no, I cannot imagine ever being someone like that person. So that was it was such a breakthrough or a shifting moment. Today we would call it, like coaches, we call it like shifting or something that creates this shift. I didn't know it was a shifting moment. I just thought, this is not for me. I'm not gonna do this anymore. The next day I didn't go back to that office anymore, this cabinet anymore. And then I was kind of like, I needed to go back and tell my dad that this is not gonna be your dream. You won't want to listen to this, what I've got to say. But I was really, I'm really admiring my courage that I had back and then, because he was supporting me. He had supported me heavily with my studies, and I was really way into almost finishing. And then he didn't say anything, but he said, okay, so what are you going to do now? And then I was talking to my girlfriend, a girlfriend of mine back and then, and she said, Tünde, you're so good with languages. Why don't you study languages? And I said, okay, I'll study languages then. So what I'm getting at is that I used to be extrinsically motivated. Yeah. So when people say something to me, I would pick it up and sort of like play with it. For me, it would be play, because it wasn't a drain. It wasn't painful. I really loved languages, and I finished my studies, and it was okay. And then I was in that business, simultaneous interpreting, and even working for the parliament in Brussels, in like the European Parliament. But I got bored. I got bored. 10 years of doing it, I got bored, sitting in that booth. And but I noticed something about myself, that there was this listening capacity. When you are simultaneous interpreter, you need to listen very deeply at a level and speak at the same time and transport meaning. You cannot waste your time just keeping the focus on words, because then you're gone. The train is gone. Yeah, people speak fast. So you need to be very smart at how you recoup, transport meaning, and at any level, even at a level when people start joking and jesting, you need to pick up that essence of the joke and then transport it into the other language. But I got bored. So, and then I thought, okay, I'm still good with languages and everything. So what else could I do? And I thought, okay, so I like working with people, because being in the booth, I was missing the people.
Right.
And then I ended up doing communications trainings, and there I realized that people were having fun, they learned a lot, but I got bored again because I couldn't see the transformation happening. When people learned a skill in a training, they went back to their daily routine, and as if the learning had evaporated, it was
gone.
And so that I couldn't see the impact. And then I went home. I remember I went home and I asked my husband, hey, look, I'm done. And I was like 30 something. Yeah. And I said, so I need some, I want something real, something that intrinsically motivated. And then he said, well, go, let's agree on a month. You look for a month. I look for a month, about like the same time, and see what you would find for yourself as something that your heart is singing for, something that your heart is singing for. And then I look up something, and then we'll talk. And we found the same thing. It was coaching.
I love that idea of looking for something that your heart is singing for. And I mean, just to sort of encapsulate that journey that you've taken, all of it was developing your ear also, for being in that listening space with another human being. And then the wanting the transformative part of it, at the end of it. But that's listening with your heart. And so you find coaching. Brilliant. And what do you think coaching in what ways has your ideas about coaching shifted from when you first found it? Your heart was singing, you first found it, but then that's kept you not bored, honestly, because you've continued to grow and develop as a coach. What was the shift that you noticed during that time?
I'm not sure if I'm not going to get bored one day with coaching, okay? Because I'm a type of
Fair enough. Fair enough.
uh, uh, so although I can answer your question, if you will, so it's not that I couldn't, but I'm there's a caveat to this, because I know myself. When I get too good at something, good without sounding hopefully arrogant, it's just like when there is a routine in that and you don't see like, I need the sense of something is that I'm impactful and changing and shifting. So I love change, actually.
Yeah.
And so I cannot guarantee that won't happen. But how my idea of coaching has changed is a lot. And I'm just thinking which aspect to bring up most, which one matters to me most is today, I don't want to know anymore in terms of when I'm going into a coaching session or I'm meeting a client. That's gone. I don't want to know. I don't want to know anything. So I just look forward to meeting a person or going into an organization. Actually, whenever I know something, it's as if I wanted to shelve it somewhere. Yeah. Just don't tell me. Just let me just sense it. Let me just sense it and figure it out in whatever is emerging in this emergency moment. So I don't want to know. And interestingly, what I realized today, and I didn't know that before, when I was a novice coach, that anything that we need to know to start working with emerges in the first 5 to 10 minutes in any encounter. And because I have made this experience, this is what I'm looking for, this innocent, this blank sheet, going in as a blank sheet as best as we can. I mean, I'm not a blank sheet ever because I'm bringing myself in anyways. And that's everything but a blank sheet. Yeah. While when I was a novice, oh God, I wanted to know it all and be prepared and have the structure and the skill and which tool. And today we're going to do this. And what did we do yesterday or the last time? And then studying everything. And it was all in my way, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And back and then it was okay. Back and then it was okay. But today that doesn't serve the coaching that I like doing.
Yeah.
Let's put it.
Yeah, the thing that's really showing up as you're talking about this is this movement towards letting go and attachment to, and it's almost like the outcome, like we get all like, I need to know everything. I think it also shows up in conversations where a client brings forth something sort of superficial in those first 5 to 10 minutes. They brought typically up the deeper underlying meaningful issue also, but we hear this sort of surface topic and we're like, I want to know all about that so I can help you solve it. I can help you be, solve whatever this problem is. And if I'm hearing you correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, for you, it was the letting go of the need to know the details, need to know just even what we did last time, because things have probably changed since the last time we met, the need to have a direction or a plan for the coaching for that day, but rather to just really fully be with another human being. And that really kind of translates into the work that you've been doing around presence. And I would love to hear a bit more about what your research has been exploring.
Yes, I'm just noticing. Let me just take in what you have shared is, before I come to answering that question, let me just share one more thing about that. I would even go as far as saying that I'm ready to let go of the need of needing to not to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Being in that neutral space. Yeah.
sometimes there is a need to know something. Okay, it's not that I hope that when people are listening to this, they don't believe that I never get informed about my clients. Yeah, this is
right.
this is not what I'm saying. It's just like to not be obsessed, not to be obstructed by just being open to, okay, what's the situation? What does the situation want us to do now? And if it's to, okay, go and pick up that information because you will need that, okay, but not from a place of needing it, the neediness of it. Yeah. Listen, is it really useful, or would it be better for the sake of the entire thing that we are embarking on to not know first and then maybe come back to that piece of information at a later point in time? So that's something that I wanted to add. Presence. Wow. So this is a big topic. You're opening a big chapter and a chapter that it grew out of, let's start with that. It grew out of an experience, an almost failure moment again with a client of mine, where I did not realize, although I was an MCC back and then, please. So an MCC does not guarantee anything. No. For me, it doesn't. No. I was an MCC. And this is not to say that the people who are accrediting us are not doing a great job, but there is so many things that we don't know. Right. There's so many things where each and every MCC also needs to still grow. Yes. Or has potential. Yes, it is not a destination. It is just a mile marker. That's all it is. Yeah. We just step on a different boat again. That's right. New boat, new river. Yes, exactly. I love it. And so then it's time to start rowing the little boat again. Yes. I even am an advocate of getting accredited with different professional bodies. And that's what I'm doing, actually. Mm-hmm. So I got also accredited with EMCC. And I'm pursuing, because each professional body will be looking into different qualities of a coach. And to make a coach complete, because we are looking for wholeness and how can we expand who we are as coaches, with due fairness and with due respect to ICF, they cover many things, but a different organization will help us grow through an accreditation process, yet in a different way. So it's not about, getting accredited and getting all those accolades, but actually there is this curiosity around what do they pay attention to when they want to see a master level coaching. Mm-hmm. The curiosity around what would they define as such. And again, Apex in the UK, they are looking at it from yet a different perspective. So that's what I'm curious about, like how can we grow and really do the test, because we also need to undergo tests. That's my belief. My core belief is to go back and get ourselves tested over and over again, because we are also just human beings. And but I think we're getting off track here. So Lisa, please help me. Okay, so let's go back to the presence and what your research is discovering, because I really do appreciate, though, the myriad lenses at which different organizations explore coaching, giving people more, I don't know, agency, more capacity to be fully present with another human being, which really is what the work is that you've been working on. So I see a connection for myself as you're talking. It's interesting that I got there. I don't know, something that you said triggered me to say that and mention that. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Here, I want to create value, and maybe I should let go of this need of to create value for you. Maybe it's in a moment, so that I don't end up in chaos when I'm sharing stories. So so it was an almost failure moment, because I was an MCC, and I did not realize how I was bringing organizational pressure into a session. Because when I was hired by the CEO, he wanted the female client that I was coaching, she was meant to be included at a leadership level, like a board level into leadership. And that leadership team consisted of men only back and then. And he wanted, for whatever reason, I don't want to judge this, include that coachee that I was having, was a woman. And I remember when he hired, he said, you better make a good job of this.
Oh, nothing else to trigger that good girl, huh?
Like, of course, exactly. And that triggered that good girl in me. Because of course I will. I mean, excuse me, what else would I?
What else would I do?
A good job of it. But it was so heavily, embodied. It was really in my body. It was really like everywhere that I showed up in a way that I didn't realize. And the client picked it up. The client was saying at one point, very early on in the coaching engagement, Tünde, why are you moving backward? When the words that you're saying, it's a yes, that the yes is a forward word, it's the forward, it has a potential to be positive. But when you, at the same time, your body you're leaning back into the chair, it's a no. And she picked it up and I didn't even notice it that I was doing that. And I became very, very curious about this incongruence of the verbal output and the nonverbal output. And how important that seemed to be to the client, and that really made me think, okay, so, I've never thought that people were stupid, but that was the conviction that, Jesus, clients are there and picking up everything because they're looking for trust. What can I really trust here in this space? And it's not just the words, and it's not just what we utter in terms of, but there seems to be an energy around us that is made up of more than just the words and the verbal output. And if we are not congruent in any way, well, that will show, and that other person will definitely pick it up. They are not stupid, but I never believed that they were. So, but it really was this conviction of, I need to pay more attention to this. And then I started looking out there, like, what do we know about this phenomenon of synchronicity? And then I found that psychotherapy knows a lot about it. Natural sciences, when we speak about the schools of fish, how schools of fish know naturally how to respond to each other in the water, to pressure next to each other because they don't speak. And the beautiful dance that actually, emerges when we are looking at the schools of fish. Then I understood, okay, so my client was responding to my pressure that was lodged in my body, and not to the yes that was coming.
The image that just showed up as you're talking about this is I'm really envisioning Jane Goodall as she's meeting with, like, she's creating the relationships with the chimpanzees, and that sense of mirroring and the connectedness that is so important of the nonverbals. I mean, given that 85 to 90% of our communication is nonverbal, so how that incongruency, to use your language, is so crucial to that sense of trust and connectedness and safety to explore further. Absolutely.
And it's not just a mirroring, it's really like we are responding to each other. It's when you're saying mirroring, I'm not saying that you said that, but it's prompting me to mention that, because mirroring is something more conscious. Got it.
It's really more of the unconscious, just synchronicity of the two people who are in the dance.
Because we naturally connect. We are wired to naturally connect, unless something in that relationship doesn't match and we disconnect for some reason. And we might believe that we're connected, because when I was doing the research, coaches who were MCC, the higher the experience, the higher the accreditation level, the more the coaches were convinced that they were present. But the videotapes were showing that they were not, because we were measuring this, what we call motion energy, in the room between the coach and the client over several sessions. So we have substantial data showing that over the course of the engagement, how they were actually, that the presence was decreasing over time, not increasing over time, but decreasing over time, which we interpreted in a very specific way. But we are having, or maybe, let me just be very careful. Aren't we having, let me ask the question in a very coach-like manner, yeah? Aren't we having assumptions a lot about presence? Because when all those accredited coaches, the novices were a lot better. So they were more cautious about how they were more open and, you know, having this beginner mind. Sure, because the novices have the beginner mind. We coaches who are established, we are so this is what the data was showing is, we believe we have very big beliefs. We believe that we don't have beliefs, but we do have beliefs about presence. And they would say that we are present and we were not. They were not. And I'm calling this in my book, the Snow White phenomenon. As if we were the queen in the Snow White fairy tale, looking into the mirror and saying, well, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest, who's the most present of them all? And we are doing this, and the more established the coach, the more he or she would show in the study, and we had 184 coach-client pairs over time, over 10 sessions. So we have substantial data to say something like this. What does that tell us about who we are as MCCs? Just to take that mastery level by ICF and other mastery levels by other accreditation bodies. What does that say about us in terms of what we believe that we know about presence?
That's a really interesting question. What does it tell us in your mind?
Well, what we found is that I can only just very humbly share what we found. And it's the first substantial study looking into this nonverbal motion, presence through movement only. So not caring about the verbal output, about the conversations. We didn't know what the coaches were talking about. My premise was that who we are essentially and how we are connecting will show anyways, because that's what I experienced with the client of mine. It will show anyways. I don't need words. It will show in how I am showing up. And what we found was, to our surprise, were several things. That it's more complex. It's not just let's cocoon or let's be attuned. These are all big words. What do they mean? What's that? You know, we're saying that, but when it really comes to, I'm supervising internal coaches at the United Nations. We're having a session today, a supervision session. These coaches understand and they know, like, presence, okay, this is a human, but how to do it, Tünde, how to do it.
That is the $1 million question, isn't it?
So we are throwing about as a lot of big words. And then the question is, and how to? And the fact, what we found is, and again, very humble about this, yeah? Because other people, and I invite other people to go out there and do more research into this, although I know that people say presence cannot be measured. And I would like to challenge that anything that you want to measure can be measured, just a matter of how you are looking at something and what is the instrument with which you are measuring. So everything is measurable. So several things. One is that presence is not about the coach, but we are still calling it coaching presence in the terms of the coach needs to be present. We are not viewing it yet really as a relational capacity, that we are very, very much shaped by how the clients show up, and that we are not detached systems where we set the button, like we press the button and do like clean, and then we go into session and then we pretend that we are, and we shouldn't be, because actually not the whole point of staying detached. It's about building up a proximity with the client that is, of course, professional, and I'm calling it in my book professional proximity rather than detachment, to acknowledge in what way am I really right now influenced in any way potentially by that client, to be open to this. And we are not.
Yeah. Well, Or we can be though. So like, are there things to be intentional about? Are there things to really be exploring within oneself as a coach that would allow for creating more of this relational dance, proximity, and invitation for presence between the two people, right? Like,
I mean, I'm not sure what you're saying.
well, I may have asked that as a really poor question, so I can try again, but let's see what you come up with from there.
Yeah, like what comes to my mind about this is that in what way do we share what we notice? In what way do we really pay attention, like how we are impacted? In what way do we take on an invitation by a client? For example, I had a client the other day didn't want to settle on a goal. I said, okay. I just noticed, so I'm noticing that I'm feeling lost, because it was really a feeling of lost with the client. And I said that. It was interesting that this process of not finding the goal leaves me with the sense of lost. How can we make sense of this? How this is impact? Is that my stuff, or is it our stuff, or is it, what do we want to do with? And that created such a shift. Suddenly the client said, yes, because I don't want to have a goal. And I said, okay, so what do you want?
Right. Okay, so what I'm hearing and what I'm really excited about is this idea of how do we really transparently share our experience of this relationship that we're having in ways that invite our client to share experientially what they're experiencing, and then be able to name their need. I don't want a goal today. I really want to do something completely different. And then we get to go with them wherever that happens to be. But it's that, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's a real transparency piece here of, I'm feeling lost. I don't know what we're doing, and I'm enjoying the conversation, but I'm not sure how it's of value to you. So please, help me to understand.
Yes. And this openness to this openness. So in what way is whatever the client is bringing, or how he or she's showing up? Because we know from psychotherapy already that there is transference and counter-transference always in the. For example, let me give you another example, because that transparency can also manifest in a different way. No, I was a supervisor then. So, and I was observing that coach and client, the coach was showing up as a parent.
Yeah, really.
Yes, and it was the matter of age, because the coach was a lady, like it was like two female interlocutors. The coach was way older, and the client was way younger. Like you could, like, even when I first saw them, they were showing up. It's like, okay, so the age, let the age show up. To have curiosity about anything that is there. And bingo, Charlie, it was a matter. It mattered a lot, this age thing. I didn't know that, but I just noticed it. So there's age difference. Okay, good. Let's take the next step. And then they were saying, okay, we already have known each other for a long time. And I said, oh, okay. And
yes, you have a history of a relationship.
But also just saying it out loudly, what that seemed to matter in how they had already, settled on a relationship with each other, that we feel sort of safe, but it was a fake safety, because it was actually a transference from the client in how she was showing up as a helpless child. And the coach was bringing in all the like it wasn't the coaching, it was an interrogation, like at a police station, like bringing a lot of questions to support, to rescue the child, because the child was so helpless. And because she responded to that client from the counter-transference thing, she didn't notice it, how the client's transference, the client showing up helpless, was triggering her counter-transference.
Right.
So
they were like yin and yang. Yeah.
And bingo, but it went unnoticed.
Right.
If it doesn't go unnoticed, then it can be really a super platform for the client's growth, and also for the coach's growth.
And as you're talking about this, I'm a huge advocate of supervision and coaching supervision and therapeutic supervision. And frankly, I think anybody who works with human beings, so whether it's lawyers or doctors or, anybody who really works in any kind of depth with human beings probably could really benefit from supervision. But this place where we get to bring these clients where, I'm finding myself wanting to just tell them what to do is a great place to do what you're talking about and explore this transactional analysis and how do we show up as adult to adult versus having our parent or our expertise engaged to the client's noviceness. I often consider the idea of what if I'm the novice, to your point, right? What if I'm the novice and the client is the expert? What informs my curiosity at the point that I'm the novice versus I'm the expert and my questions are all trying to lead you to the outcome that I think you need to learn, how can we be in presence with another human being if we're in the role of telling them what they need to do based on our life experience?
Yes.
Which is completely nonsense for their life experience.
And even we coaches know that we are not to give advice, but the advice can come in hidden ways through questions that
it can come through tone of voice and facial expressions. Yes, because we know that look when somebody's like, and the client knows immediately that we think there's something they're missing. It doesn't take much for us to do that. Right? We don't have to make such a big facial expression.
So there's a lot of relationality, and these are just two examples. And I'm happy to give a third one, for example, I'm taking that example from the research. So what we observed is when we were then also asking them, we were asking both the client, so the client was giving feedback about each session. We were having the videotapes that we could analyze with the software. Plus we were also asking the coaches for feedback. And then we were comparing each piece of feedback to make sense of what was really going on. We never know what was really going on, but to kind of like make some sense out of what might have happened. What we found in one particular case, and I keep telling this example because it's so telling. The coach was saying, well, with that client, it was an ideal coach-client relationship. And then I said, okay, so what makes you believe that it was ideal? Yeah, because the client was ready for coaching. There was readiness for coaching. The client she was learning. She was there. She wanted to do. I just could lean back and do nothing. And it was really like ideal. And it's true that actually it's the clients who ought to do the work and the coach doesn't do the work, etc. But what the data showed, the first thing where I got suspicious and I showed her, look, the videotapes show that you were completely out of sync with the client. That you were not responding to the client at all. Plus, the client is reporting not having felt safe. So how can we make sense of that? It's totally unexpected, right?
Can I take a stab?
Yes.
The thought that comes to my mind, though, is if it's an ideal client, but there's this sort of judgment that's coming in from the coach about what's the right thing to do, and that client is getting their own be a good girl, right? That perfect child activated. It may not feel safe because it's so reflective of past relationships where you don't have any choice. But there's no wanting to disagree. So it feels very easy for the coach because the client is just accepting and going along with in order to get along. I don't know. That's my guess. What did you guys discover?
Brilliant. So what we found, and the coach confirmed it, she brought in her pleaser driver. So the pleaser driver was there. So she brought in and was immediately pleasing the coach, and the coach took it on as something, as readiness.
Yeah.
She didn't get curious about how that's interesting. It feels like an idea. She didn't question herself with this novice's mind, this beginner's mind of, maybe I should.
Why is this so easy?
Yes.
Why is this client so ideal? And again, it's that self-reflective piece, right? Where we start to explore our own, what's happening with us and with the situation that we find ourselves in also.
And the relational thing again.
And the always relational. Yeah.
Relational. And I mean, I know that ICF is calling it dancing in the moment, but what exactly is this?
Mm-hmm.
And now when, for example, when I'm training this also, like based on the research and the book, now I'm training and this piece of presence, and I am training it in synergy with leadership. So I'm bringing in, it's always just a boutique group. It's 4 coaches and 4 leaders. So I'm not just training coaches alone because we are reproducing ourselves. That's my hypothesis. But how can we do the real learning work as coaches together with the real clients, the real leadership, and the real people, and those real people also learning more about presence, working with coaches, because presence is also relevant for leadership.
Absolutely.
What we found is that how hard this is what I'm seeing in my training practice, that the coaches are coming in and how they are like cartographers. When they are working with the leaders, it's sort of as if they were wanting to know everything. So it's wanting to know, wanting to get everything right and get done and be the good coach and the great coach, demonstrate. Also detrimental. We are finding it's detrimental. We are bringing in our needs and impacting how the leader is then showing up in the same way, or depending on their personality, probably quite the opposite then.
Right.
They're seeing all these needs, how they are, influencing each other. Just wanting to be a great coach, wanting to demonstrate coaching capacity and agency. You said the word agency today. How this can be also in the way of effectiveness. And that's also what we found, how any need that we have is, and any need that the client is bringing in, it's feeding into how things will be co-created. And we don't need big words of attunement. We just need to understand, okay, where are we with our needs? What are we really bringing into this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, it's, you've said several things and I really want to just sort of capture them that I think are so important. Everything's relational, whether we're having a relationship with a person, a dog, our story about our biases, about our belief systems, ourself, right? Like, I mean, everything is relational. And this need to slow down and have some curiosity about what it is we're bringing into the space with another human being, whether it is I'm working with the CEO who I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm working with the CEO of this giant corporation. And now I'm feeling intimidated. So I bring in my good child in order to try and please that particular client. Or if I see myself as sort of like, I'm the voice of wisdom for you, young Luke, and I'm the Obi-Wan Kenobi to help you learn how to become a Jedi master. I mean, either way, we're bringing stuff to the table and it impacts this dance or relational proximity that is created in the space between two people. I would love to hear about your project, because I know you've got a movie that you are putting I think it's kind of more, is it a documentary or a movie? I may be getting it wrong, but I would love to hear kind of what you're up to right now in the world.
Right now, I am getting away from, probably because I'm getting bored again.
So you're going to become a producer now.
No, I'm still with coaching, but I think I'm bored with just, this fad of what we call like, let's create transformational coaching for a client or even teams. I think that the power of coaching lies beyond that. And just recently, I think it was 2019, that ICF started looking into what they call also the social impact coaching, that coaching is a social impact intervention and instrument rather than just a one-on-one team or group coaching intervention, and even goes beyond organizational development even. So it's really a social impact instrument. And do we hone this mindset? Or are we too obsessed with our egos in, oh, I created transformation for that client? I mean, no, we can't.
Yeah.
Transformation anyway. So to get, so this is what I'm seeking right now. And it also grew out of a very painful moment in my life when I understood, woman, wake up. This is not about you empowering yourself through successful coaching engagements, you know, when we start running around and feeling successful and we are great coaches and stuff, yeah, and then we are posting this everywhere. How we create change. And actually, so like, are we really? So there was a painful moment in my life where I woke up saying to myself, woman, stop telling yourself this lie that you are, and stop empowering yourself when you're saying that you're coaching. Stop it, because it's not about you feeling powerful. It is about how are you really empowering other people.
Mm-hmm. Huge transformational shift.
It's a very big one, because it's no longer me believing that I am there and I can create change, and it's not me. Yeah, it is about, okay, so what is the thing that I can put in place? And we can collectively do something that's bigger than I can do, bigger than the I. And in that painful moment, it was the moment when when I finished my PhD, when my husband said, bye-bye, honey, you love coaching more than you love me, or you loved your PhD more than you love me, where I was in my ashes, and a lady contacted me and said, Tünde, I see what you have done in terms of research. I have seen what you're doing in terms of practice. I would so much love to go to Kenya, because she was planning to go back. She was in Austria for a while, and then she was planning to go back to Kenya, to her homeland. And she said, I would so much love to bring all the knowledge that I have built up here in Austria and put it in the service of women there. Because the women in Kenya, they suffer from the patriarchal system there. Mm-hmm. And she knew of an organization that's called Mama Organization. And they really are into supporting women in becoming more entrepreneurial, setting up their own businesses. And they support them with funding at the outset. They train them to have business skills. And they were interested in coaching as well. So they said, can we train the coaches to be, the women to become coaches? And this lady was telling me the story, and she said, Tünde, can you help me with this? Because you have the experience. And I remember when she was saying that, I immediately said yes. And I didn't even know how we would do that. I just felt like, wow, even in my darkest moments, life is there, and it's just giving me a sign of, when I, you know, I had this resolve of power away from me, yeah, away from me to power to others. The call was coming. The call was coming really almost simultaneously. So in synchronicity, when we are aligned with ourselves and this, the energy is right, our own energy feels right. We are not just doing something to do something for the sake of it, because we believe we must do I don't know what, but we're really aligned with our true essence energy. This true, when we are really alive, life is gonna bring us the opportunity. Yeah. And I had this opportunity and just said to that woman, I said, look, you can have all the experience that I have and all the knowledge, but we need money, because I don't want to hire coaches, bring them to Kenya and not pay them. I wouldn't want to do this. I wouldn't want to talk to coaches, and because we all invest in ourselves, train ourselves, which is a lot of money. We also invest in ourselves. So we need to honor this how coaches are looking after themselves to get trained and are investing. We can't just tell them, oh, please, let's democratize coaching. And because we're democratizing coaching, let's just do it free of charge. Okay. So I'm not the type of person that's like, we need to honor the due, give everybody the dues, the thing that they deserve, give and take. Life is about give and take. So we need to give back to those coaches. Although I'm sure that there's a lot of coaches who would be happy to do that free of charge. But that's not my philosophy. And then I had this idea of, okay, I know that there is this fairy tale out there that currently there is a trend to, people are talking about democratizing coaching. But basically what it means, and it's touted by digital coaching platforms most of the time, it means that they are, of course, a platform, a mediator between the client and the coach, but you don't earn really you
don't earn anything very much. Yeah, no, it's good for practice, but it isn't sustainable for a career because you're going to get burned out.
Exactly. And I said, so, but
they're a corporation.
Exactly. And they're selling it under the motto of democratizing coaching. And for me, that doesn't resonate well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I thought, how can I create a platform that can give the coaches the hope that we can do, or really the truth about democratizing coaching is not about coaching earning less. It's we can find other ways. We can think beyond. We are coaches. How can we shift perspectives and democratize coaching also in a different way, where mm-hmm. coaches don't need to earn less? So that's where I said, okay, what is the way to create a fund for this project? You know, training women in Kenya, that coaches can earn enough, and we can create a social impact at the same time. So I thought, okay, look, I have done this massive doctoral thesis where I was traveling the world like a madwoman, and my husband finally left me because of that, because I was never around. So that was, how can I use that opportunity of knowing so many beautiful people? Okay, I can interview them. These people will say yes to this project, I'm sure. And they did. So we could create a documentary. So creative in terms of knowledge. And I know that I have got very challenging ideas about coaching, because I don't believe that coaching is just good. I also think that it has got shadow sides, and nobody's talking about the shadow side. So maybe by creating a documentary about the light and the shadow of coaching, which nobody is addressing at the moment, we can create value for those who donate and watch. And with that money, with those funds, we can then, so it's kind of like, it's the same thing to do.
Well, and it's a beautiful window into what really motivated you also to do the light and shadow of coaching, I think. And I want to have a link to where people can go and view it and donate towards this fund for coaching for women in Kenya. I'm going to have a link to your website so listeners can find you. But I have, as we're moving to a close here, a final question for you. I don't just the final question. If you were to write an autobiography today, what would you name it? What would the title be?
Oh God, that autobiography would be let's be dirty, but not in a way that probably that might sound.
You know what? I love it. So thank you, Tünde, so much for being on the podcast today. Oh my gosh, you have so much. God, just so much. I honestly, there's a piece in there where we're looking at this idea of how much we bring into coaching conversations. I'd almost like to have another conversation with you at another time just about that, because I've been really playing with that particular idea myself. And so maybe we can figure something out for another episode. But I have absolutely enjoyed spending time with you today. Thank you so much for being on the Coaching Studio.
Thank you, Lisa. And there is a lot more to say about the findings as well. I didn't say that presence can help and harm. That's also what we found. But we didn't get to talk about.
I know. So we'll have to have another conversation at some point.
to everyone who is interested in growing, which is something natural, and listening and taking time and appreciating the work that you do, like creating spaces for other coaches to grow. I really, truly appreciate that. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.